Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SP Patrons video today that I'm making for Eli as part of their custom monthly music review. And if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen from Official髭男dism titled Crybaby. Now, I think I know the song. I have heard it before. I have watched the TV anime Tokyo Revengers before, so I'm looking forward to trying to review this. I know this is a complex song, so I will do my best. Without further ado, we're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's go! Oh, bombastic kind of big band theme here. War theme? Ooh, the power. I know I can pause here because I know the song. So let's talk about what we've got so far. Phenomenal drumming, great bass line, scintillating key focus, the vocals on point and telling a really engaging story. The band is tight. I've listened to these guys before and I've reviewed a little bit of their music by now, and it's typically a pleasure to hear them out. They're very talented musicians with a fundamental understanding of music theory and composition. And we're going to listen to more of it, and we're going to see if we can figure more of it out. Of course. Really great chord shift there with the parallels. Parallel major, minor. Great backing vocals there, I've had like. I would say this is probably one of the biggest bands to come out of Japan at the moment. Like they're phenomenal. I know people talk like the Fujikaze and stuff like that and One OK Rock and all that, but I know they're different genres, don't get me wrong, but like these guys are huge. I don't think they have a weak track. I'd like to review more of their music. I might even do an album review of them at some point simply because I am so phenomenally or deeply enamored by what they do. Like the vocal melodies here, how they're dancing over top of those different chord progressions, which are not simple, by the way, and the guitars to sort of like octave harmonize over that without being too sharp. Because it's a fizzy guitar tone, don't get me wrong. But there's just such a wonderful understanding of how to get the chemistry between these different ingredients, and I'm blown away time and time again by their talent and their attention to detail as well. Back to the verse. And what's this? Great. Great vocal filtering. Thoroughly dramatic breakdown. It's aggressive, but it's also intoxicating with the ludicrous tones we have there, just how suffocating it is with the full force of the music at that point. It's the studio production is incredible. Like these headphones I'm wearing are gonna kick your ass if you have not done well with that front. And I'm just it's like I can't really use the word I want to use to describe how this sounds because it's not PG, but it's pretty it's very enjoyable. Great triplet focus. But words to gouge the deep inside of my heart invaded by weakness. So this song so far, is it about people who are they're comfortable in their own pain and misery together. They're trying to figure out why they even go to bat with each other in the first place. But, the second verse was about the way they treated each other. Like, just for it to... We fight against the depraved bad ending. Even if we're not perfect people, we still want to do the best we can to avoid the absolute worst. Oh, that's satisfying. Wow, that got chills. That gave me chills. Just before we go into it, because I don't want to do too much of this in the conclusion, this is behind the scenes stuff for people who don't just skip to the conclusion. I'm not sure if people skip to the conclusion. I've started putting timestamps in these reviews now so that people can just go straight to the conclusion part if they want to miss the listening section. I didn't like this track when I first heard it. I think I couldn't really get my head around why it was adding things. But I think, like that weren't there in the intro. I like, my ex used to play the song a lot when I was with them. And like that, I couldn't get it there, but now I understand it. I think you really need to just sit there and saturate yourself with the music and actively listen to it. They've got wisdom beyond their years. Like they really, the stories they're telling and the music they're making, they should be older than this, but they're not. And it just goes to show the ludicrous amount of potential that we have nowadays with not only the technology, but also just music and how it's evolved as a whole. And I think part of it is also the fact that we basically have had to survival of the fittest. With people nowadays, how competitive the industry is, you really cannot afford to put out a half-assed track. But I'm thoroughly blown away by this. Thoroughly blown away. Because this is the conclusion of my review of this track from Official Higuedan dism titled Crybaby. What do I think this track is about? I think that this track is about people who are basically being kind of drowned by the rain of their own tears and the pain that comes from that. I think that maybe it's the tears of the collective, maybe it is just their tears itself, but we start talking about I'll fight any opponent I'll take, I'm not afraid of any opponent. And I wonder if it's simply people who are fighting with each other and then they realize that maybe they're better off kind of coming together eventually and just realizing how stupid it is that they're fighting amongst themselves and trying to go for a bigger purpose or a bigger cause. That's basically my take on what this track is about, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. On this drenching night we sworn our revenge. I think that it's basically saying, on the night that we cried together, we realized, hey, we can be better than this and we can kind of get there. And there's a line that he said about wanting a word instead of an umbrella, and it makes me think, oh, so he literally he doesn't want lukewarm kindness, but he wants to actually feel something. He's comfortable in the mediocrity or whatever situation he's in that's causing him to feel a sense of emptiness. He just wants to be alive and to really feel the intensity of it and not to be apathetic anymore, potentially. But even if I'm completely off, I still think the story was thoroughly interesting to listen to and read along to and stuff like that. I'm sure that it'd be even more intense if you were the kind of person where you understood language natively. I don't understand the language because Japanese is not my native tongue, but that's an advantage that people who speak the language fluently will always have over me. I will never have that total kind of like understanding of it, but I think that it's still enjoyable to read through. And the vocals are tremendous. Like the singer is a wonderful vocalist and really just slammed it, man. They absolutely destroyed that performance. Now, the reason that I'm so stoked with it is not just that it was the hidden chest voice. Then the hit, like we had like some falsettos in there. We had wonderful melodies and harmonies and lots of different cool things to it. It's the variety of it, and it's how well we pulled it off. Like we went at one point in that like second half of the verse, we went up and between the hidden chest, like we kind of like went like that, and it was just absolutely batshit insane. It's a tremendous effort. And there were parts, especially in that breakdown area, where like just they slammed out that long note with full force, and it matched the intensity of the other parts of the track, and it was just so impressive. Really sold the vocal performance there, the desperation, the angst there that came through in the story. So 10 out of 10 on that front as far as I'm concerned. A phenomenal effort. But outside of the vocals, I think there were some backing vocals as well in the chorus parts as well, which had a lovely pad-like effect there, which were a wonderful way to continue that hook moving forward and to keep the listener's attention. So that was also a word of wanted to mention that. But outside of that, I think it was just the song at just under 4 minutes. It's just so much to put in there with the various verse, bridge, and chorus parts, the breakdown we had in there, as well as the interlude and the extended chorus section with the various modulations there of the melody, as well as the other instruments chipping in. It was an absolute musical feast, an oral feast, and we had so much going on with the guitars, the bass, the drums, the keys, and the vocals together. Let's just break it down individually. The way that the drums were done, and I know they're not necessarily a focal point, but just the establishment of all those different grooves, whether it was 8th and 16th note focuses or some triplet elements there, knowing to bring it up and make it nice and bombastic in that hook section, but having things be a little bit, knowing to just step out basically when we had those triplet guitar arpeggios and the final pre-chorus. We had a great kind of like recognition of what was required on the kit, and we never overstepped the boundaries. We pocketed when we needed to, but we can also clearly play and keep in time. So percussion was nailed. The bass lines phenomenal. Like I've said phenomenal a lot. They were really cool, and we not only backed up those root notes really well, but we also had a great sort of exploration of the fretboard there, where we knew not just to stick with those root notes, but we could explore and kind of go through the triads, or like kind of like do a little bit of other sort of like adventuring, maybe a little bit higher up, while staying within the scales and modes. And it was simply to allow a bit more color in there, but again, it never overstepped the boundaries. It knew to kind of pull back in the sort of like more kind of like straightforward parts. And especially when we had more complicated harmonies in there, like from the guitars and the keys, we pulled the bass back to kind of like play along with those and not to keep it simple. And I think that was great. The guitars were tremendous with the octave chords, the focus on the distortion there, with a really fizzy tone that just did work really. It worked really well with the rest of the parts of the arrangement, composition, but also the triplets coming in after the breakdown was a nice touch. We had a really kind of feisty, aggressive theme in that breakdown there. It sounded great with some of the synth parts as well that we had, as well as the bass and drums coming into unison, just kind of like slamming it. And all in all, we could clearly play the strings, but again, there was moderation. And the keys as well, great sort of like peppiness with some of the staccato parts and the verse parts, but we just kind of had more of a smoothness in the chorus parts to kind of keep things a little more sort of like free-flowing. And we knew to we had parallel majors and minor chords there, I think, to kind of go outside of the expected key signature limitations, because they love their sort of jazzy influences and their unexpected twists and turns, but also it's like they may have had extensions in the harmonies and stuff like that, but they knew to kind of like make it work for the way the vocals were going in the story that was being told there. So Basically, again, moderation. We did play, and we played tremendously well, but we also knew to sort of like underplay, if that makes sense. And I got to hand it to them. They've got a really great sense of where to go and how to kind of pull back with the different energy levels, and it's wonderful. The theme overall, from like the sort of the big band kind of military kind of like intro there, that wartime kind of groove there, on like on a trash heap, just kind of bashing away at their instruments and jamming together. It's symbolic of active defiance, which makes a lot of sense with Tokyo Revengers, be the anime this is on top of, but also just it was loud and proud and shouting out and trying to let it be known, the stuff in the story, and the music never really took second stage to the vocals. It was as if the theme was, accompaniment was as important as the story being told, and everyone was in it together. And there was no filler whatsoever, and it was great to listen to with a lot of range tonally, lots of little twists and turns, and I don't think there was a note out of place. The instruments were played very, very well, and I can understand why they're so successful. 131 mil plays on this video as of this point in time, and I am not surprised. Finally, the studio recording, mixing, and mastering was just on point. Like, I don't think we could have done anything to improve it. The vocals were nice and clear with the backing parts kind of like pad-like and sweet over top. To the sides, the guitar, bass, drums, and keys were nice and present in the mix with very little kind of like, they were notched well, so they each had their own space in the frequency spectrum. So that was nicely balanced there. Nice and wide in the stereo field as well. It sounded like a live performance while still being studio grade. The drums and bass were nicely controlled and more sort of like poignant and punchy, and the guitars were more sort of like smooth, despite the kind of like the sassiness of the fizzy distortion tone. The keys nice and bright and a high end, and things had room to breathe because of the amount of dynamic range, but also the leveling was tight, so things were exactly where they needed to be there. The limiting compression was wonderful. It was nice and loud without pumping. Honestly, like, I think I have a new appreciation for the song after, re-listening to it and having an active listen. So I would recommend that you do too outside of this review. But thank you very much for watching my review of Official Higu男dism, the track Crybaby, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go check out the various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I will catch you in the next SU Patrons video. Spiderhands out.